I'm Michael.
Hi, I'm Rich.
And this is the ODL podcast. How are you this week, Rich?
I've been absolutely shit. I've had Ofsted today. My brain isn't really working. So all these sentences that are about to come out of my mouth, they'll be a miracle if they make any sense.
Okay. But at least things are kind of easing back into normality for you in your life a little bit.
Yeah, very, very quickly. It's like, oh, here's 1 week to get back to school. Next week, Ofsted. Oh, great. Yeah, fine. So 0 to 100 in the space of a week with COVID testing in between.
True, but you like being busy. Don't pretend you don't like being busy. I know you, and you can't sit still. You have to be doing something.
True, and I like a routine as well, so it is quite nice to be back. But I did about 50 hours last week, and I'm about 50 this week. So, oh well. Wow. How are you? What are you doing with your week?
Yeah, well, I mean, nothing's different for me because I'm still at home. I'm still working from home. You know, nothing's really changed. I will say though that I am blissfully happy in that it just feels like over the space of like a week or two, it's just suddenly getting so much lighter at night. So like I think nearly every day this week after work, I've been for a long walk where there's two connecting reservoirs near
Wayo!
Yeah, Wayo and Entwistle near me. I did. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. I did one yesterday near Chorley. That was really nice with a friend of mine. I've just been getting out and going for nice long walks after work just to try and, get a bit of mindfulness and peace and tranquility back in. And it just kind of helps break up the week. So that's been really...
And breaks up your day. Stops, and work ends, home life begins.
Well, that's exactly it. Because I usually finish work just kind of like a fish out of water. I just flop onto my bed and just stick the PlayStation on and play on Fortnite with some friends because I'm 12. And that's kind of my week, and that's it every day. And you have to because I mean right now it's just getting like blue outside, and that's what it's like at 4 o'clock just a few weeks ago. So it's been nice to get back to kind of a little bit more normality and being able to just go outside and enjoy the sunshine.
So would you like to meet possibly the most approachable, super friendly person who's amazing with conversation and has been a member for 13 years?
I don't believe such person could exist, but I endeavour to.
He'll probably deny he exists as well, but I'm sure he's very, very humble. But nonetheless, it is Dr. Tim Hooson. How are you, Dr. Tim?
I'm very well, Richard, and I don't quite recognise that description of me, but that's very kind.
Well, I think I first met you at Halloween. It must have been
Halloween, yes.
So I can only remember you being very approachable, but I won't lie, I was a bit drunk. So
I was probably I was very approachable. I was also very pissed.
Well, I mean, when you've done 377 events, then I can imagine they all come a bit of a blur. I mean, unlike the climbers who rack up events very, very quickly, how on earth have you got to 377 events?
Well, that's over 13 years. Yeah, that's I've accrued them over quite a long period of time. Yes, I think it was 20. It was 2019, the one where I met you, wasn't it? Just before, just a few months before we entered this crazy lockdown time.
But then again, I did see you more recently. We went to Aysgarth Forth for the
Wensleydale camp. Yes.
Yeah, that was lovely down there. And you showed off your new camper van. So everyone else has, rocked up, put the tents up, and out comes this shining silver beacon of a camper van. And you can tell he's retired because that's what he spent all his retirement money on, just rocking up in this gorgeous van, which I won't lie, was very, very comforting. He had a cup of tea on the go every time you needed one. So I was very grateful.
This is what really, I always think about this with retirement. I think, I can't wait till the day that I can retire. I think since I first stepped into an office, I was like, I can't wait to retire.
I think that's probably something that I've been thinking about for at least 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did I was very conscious that I wanted to stop working when I was still sort of fit and able enough to enjoy my leisure time. And I'm very pleased that I was able to leave work when I did. I haven't been able to perhaps make the most of it in the last year.
So what have you been doing over lockdown then?
My leaving present from the practice was COVID-19. So I contracted that pretty much on my last day of work. So I spent 3 weeks kind of either in bed or feeling sorry for myself, feeling achy, feeling feverish, coughing, etc. And then at the end of that 3 weeks, I felt fine. Spring was coming. We had a nice kind of warm, sunny April, didn't we? I spent a lot of time in the garden, sorting out my garden that's been neglected for years. I was going running most days. I was cycling. It was actually, and I was just having, it was nice just having a rest and not having to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then as things started easing, as the restrictions gradually reduced, I was able to go out for walks with little groups of friends and so forth, and then started doing outdoor lad stuff in the summer, the micro events and things that we were able to do. And that the Wensleydale camp was, it was brilliant. I think that's just about the only outdoor lads camping event that happened. That went really well. But I also did some unofficial kind of camping events with outdoor lads friends. I went to the Lake District, went to Glencoe in September, and I actually spent a lot of time traveling, and I managed to get over to France. I spent nearly a month away, and I joined Pride Expeditions for a trek in the Alps. A couple of years ago, we did a thing called the Tour de Mont Blanc, where you do a kind of circuit around Mont Blanc, and this was similar. It was a similar area. It starts in Chamonix and finishes in Zermatt, and you're staying in huts, hostels, accommodation of different sorts every night, and you carry all your stuff with you. So you know, your clothes, sleeping bag.
That must be quite hard at altitude.
It's quite hard, partly because it's at altitude, partly because you're going up and down at least 2, maybe 3 big hills every day, and you're carrying all this stuff with you, and it gets hotter and hotter through the day. It's France, Switzerland in the middle of August, so it gets hotter and hotter. It gets humid. Then quite often you have a thunderstorm in the afternoon, and I've done other overseas trips with outdoor lads / Pride Expeditions. I've done Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, but I actually found this quite hard, not because it was technically challenging, but just because you're doing quite long days and you're carrying quite a lot of stuff around. And some of the other overseas trips, everything's supported, and you have porters and you're carrying very little. But with this, you're carrying everything, a reasonable amount of stuff. Obviously you pare it down and you carry the minimum that you can, but you've got some clothing, change of clothes, a bit of food, water, and so forth. That becomes quite arduous, really, when you're doing that for a week or so.
So when you were up at base, I didn't know you'd been to base camp of Everest, which I'm sort of jealous of, but I don't know where you went to. It might be different then, but all the stories now where it's very touristy, very busy all the time.
It is very busy. I went, I think it was about 6 years ago, and there's various different routes up, but there are certain points where the routes merge, and so you do encounter a lot of people at some points. As you get further up, less so. But again, it's a really amazing, once in a lifetime kind of trip. Again, not technically challenging, but it has its challenges because of as a kind of endurance thing, because of the length of the trek and the fact that it just gets so bitterly cold at night, and the places you stay are quite remote, and you're staying in these huts that are basically made of plywood. And as you get further up, the facilities get more and more limited. So you may have a little bit of electricity or no electricity, and the heating universally, they have a kind of kitchen and a dining, socializing area that has a stove in the middle that burns yak's poo, and you're nice and warm in there. And then you go to your room, which is just probably a little, sort of plywood shack kind of thing off the corridor, and there is no heating there. And as soon as the sun goes down, the temperature really, really drops. So you end up, as you're going higher up, it's obviously, it gets colder and colder at night. and you end up just sort of getting into your sleeping bag with pretty much all your clothes on. And you wake up in the morning and there's ice on the inside of the window, and your phone doesn't work because it's too cold for the battery to function. And that's quite a, after a few nights, you kind of, you're sitting around the fire, and you kind of, this is next, at some point I've got to go to bed and I'm going to be really, really cold, and you know it's coming. And you get up in the morning and it's still cold, and you have breakfast and you go outside and you've got your down jacket on, everything, it's still cold, and then you start walking and the sun comes up and it warms up, and you have another lovely, fantastic day of walking.
I bet when the sun comes up, everything, the views more than make up for.
Oh, absolutely. And there's some really, you're surrounded by mountains all the time. There's some really amazing, beautiful scenery. And the trip was so well supported by guides. We had, I think, 3 guides and half dozen porters, who each of those porters, and they're only kids, some of these guys, they're carrying a bag that's got 2 people's belongings, 2 people's kit. They're carrying that up the mountain, and they usually, you get your bag packed, you leave that outside and you get ready, and by the time you set off, they've set off with your stuff, and you pass them at various points on the route while they're having a bit of a break, but they always catch you up. And when you get to the next place that you're staying, your bag is there ready, waiting for you.
Is there never a point on that trip where you're just kind of thinking, God, what am I doing here? Like, why am I not at home watching Desperate Housewives in my pajamas? Like, why am I on this route? What am I doing? It's freezing. And why am I here?
Absolutely. You have a lot of moments like that. And the altitude, the other thing is the altitude, as it gets higher and the oxygen levels reduce, everyone becomes a bit more grumpy and a bit more tired, and you're not sleeping as well. And so it does, you do get to a point where you're nearing base camp, where you think, I just want this to be over. I've
seen what I wanted to see then.
And it was that day, to the day that we did base camp, was actually quite hard. And with the place that we were staying was a really grotty, horrible place where I won't describe the toilets to you, but it really wasn't pleasant. And I think we were all, the food was horrible, we were all ill. And as we started to come back down the mountain, you can almost feel the oxygen going back into your lungs. Obviously, you're not working as hard because you're going downhill, you're getting more air. And the next place that we stayed was just a really lovely, beautiful kind of hut that was raised up on stilts with views around it, and nice little cozy place. There was only us staying there, and the people who were running it were really friendly and welcoming. And you kind of know you're on the home stretch, couple of days, you're going to be back down, and it feels really good.
How does it compare then when you go to somewhere like that, like either the Alps and Mont Blanc, and you go around to like the Himalayas? How does it compare when you come back to go into the Peak District and to the Lake District, into our national parks, compared to like world national parks?
It's a different scale, isn't it? But the beauty is still there, at the feeling that you're particularly somewhere like the Lake District or Scotland, you can still get this feeling that you're quite remote.
I think the thing with, like, if you go to, like you say, if you're doing like Everest or something like that, you've got to really, you're packing for an adventure. You're going, there's a lot of prep, there's a lot of planning, there's, days and days before, you're getting everything ready. You've really got to be organized, and then there's the whole travel all the way there, and then the adventure, and then the travel all the way back. I think that the different thing about being in the UK is that sometimes part of that adventure and being able to enjoy the things that we've got here is even just a case of thinking, God, I'm not, it's only been an hour and a half in the car, and suddenly I'm in this absolutely gorgeous tundra of mountainous, snowy mountains and stuff like that in the middle of the lakes, whatever. And it's you just kind of remember just how fortunate you are to live in a country where we've got all this on our doorstep. We're really lucky. Sometimes I'm glad we live in such a small country compared to others, because we have all this sort of nature and beauty just a stone's throw away. Even that little walk I do up the road in Entwistle, all the trees all around, I don't know the names of them, I'll have to get Brian Cosgrove back on, but even the trees were like, you know, you almost feel if you squint, you feel like you're in Canada or something. It's really beautiful. So I suppose there's that difference, isn't there, in where you go in?
I think I agree. I just think for me, there's something homely about the land that's nearby. And I realise it's only what I've learned of lockdown as I'm becoming a bit more homesick, because I haven't been home for, you know, back to Yorkshire for about a year and a half now. And that's the whole point, is that when you go home, yeah, it's what I saw every single day, but now I'm craving it. It's the familiarity of home, and it's my landscape, and it's, you know, I can't describe it any other way, I suppose. But then, it's never going to compare to someone like the Himalayas or like the massive national parks in America. But it's my national park. It's my land.
And it is good, as you were saying, Michael, that actually all of these things are very accessible to us. I live 10 minutes drive from the Peak District, and it's great to have all that stuff on your doorstep. And one of the problems, obviously, times like this, is it's on everybody else's doorstep as well.
Yeah. So because you lead walks, Tim, so what's a typical walk for you when you try and lead a walk? Do you have a viewpoint in mind? Do you have a cake stop in mind, or how does
it's very varied. I certainly in the Peak District, I try to find places where there's a variety of different, because there's so much different landscapes in the Peak District. So you've got rivers, you've got woods, you've got hills. So it's always good to have a hill where people can have a view. It's nice to have a bit of a walk along the river that's a bit more relaxed. And yeah, it's great to be able to build in a pub stop or a cake stop. Or there's a walk that I run sometimes where we start at the Grindleford Station Cafe, which is, I don't know whether you'd say it's famous or infamous, but it had a reputation a few years ago. The guy who ran it was quite grumpy, and he used to have all these signs everywhere saying, don't do this and you can't do that, and it's 20p to use the toilet, and don't stand here. And he died, and the son runs it now, but they've kept this tradition, and it's all a little bit tongue-in-cheek. They kept the tradition of all the signs.
Oh, I love quirky stuff like that. It's like, I'm sure who was I listening to? It was someone like Stephen Fry or someone like that on their Desert Island Discs, talked about how they used to purposely go to this restaurant in London somewhere where the service was absolutely abhorrently poor and nasty and horrible, but they used to be like, should we go there? Like excitedly to go there because the service was so bad that it was like an event for them.
Yeah, and at least you know what you're going to get, and your expectations are being raised. I do a walk where we start there, and some people just come for the walk, but I actually get there a bit early, and we have breakfast there.
Well, I've done it the other way around, where we finished and gone for Sunday dinner, and that's always quite nice. But again, it's a different dynamic. Lovely. Yeah, well, were you on that walk, Michael, around Sale Water?
No, but I would definitely dig into that.
Well, I remember it was just before, it must have been almost this time last year, because it was just before lockdown. And then we were all talking about, oh, is this the last event we'll be able to do, do you think? But that was nice, because you finished the walk and had that meal together, and it was dead lovely. How was the dynamic then, meeting new people for breakfast too? Like, because I imagine, you got strangers turning up and you're about to have a meal with them.
It's kind of informal. You just turn up there, order your own food, and come and sit down and join us. Some people have some breakfast, some people don't bother, some people have a cup of tea. But yeah, in fact, the last one of those I did, which I think was my last walk before lockdown, we had coincidentally a couple, and I think there weren't many of us in the group, and we had a couple of new members come and join us, get yourself some breakfast, and it was actually a nice way of introducing them to Outdoor Lads, and for them to realise that we are a friendly, welcoming group.
Tell me about bikes. That's my next question. Because you do
bikes.
Yeah, because you lead the any rider, any bike things, don't you?
Well, the idea is it's not quite. The idea is it's not like you have to have a super duper fancy expensive bike, and it's not like you have to be a really good cyclist. It's very much like the walks that we do, that it will fit to the ability of the group, and we will go at the pace of the slowest person, or we will wait for people. and it's usually not too long, so there's no rush to get around, and there will be stops for coffee, lunch, beer, whatever people want to have. And the first one I did, started in a park near where I live and went around the edge of Sheffield through some very different kinds of on and off road terrain, but mostly off road through parks and woods and things. And we finished off at a local pub. The second one I did was a bit of a longer one that went it was slightly longer distance and it went further out. And it just so happened that it turned out to be just about the hottest day of the year. And we were doing the bike ride, and then we had a social in the evening. And the bike ride, just because of the weather conditions, was absolutely exhausting, because when you're cycling along, particularly downhill in the wind, you don't always realize how hot it is and how dehydrated you're getting. And when we came back from that, we were all absolutely knackered.
If you've got an idea for something you want to say to us, a voice clip, maybe one of your favourite Outdoor Lads memories, then go to the Outdoor Lads website, About Us, find the Outdoor Lads the podcast, and there'll be a form for you to fill out to send us some content.
If you're a member of ODL and you fancy becoming a leader, why don't you have a look online at the website About Us, Become a Leader. What I was going to ask you next, Tim, was actually about using your doctor experience to some degree. For all the listeners out there, I have an anxiety disorder. Yes, hello, well done. But generally, I talk about things like that on my walks quite a bit, because I don't know how it happens. If I'm on a walk, I just blurt out my life story, because I'm quite an extrovert and I just can't stop talking. But one thing I was talking to my GP about before is the increase in people who are going to see their GP about mental health things. What I was going to ask you really is, as a walk leader as well, do we think it's a good place for people to open up? Is it welcoming? Are we a good place to help people? Are we in a good position to help people?
Yeah, I think we are. It obviously has to come from them. Some people, like you, like to open up about things, and feel confident to do so. Other people don't. I think just the fact of Outdoor Lads being there and events, it gives people that opportunity. And even if it's just the opportunity to get out of whatever situation they're in and be with different people and feel welcomed, feel respected. So I think there's a big part of just being there and being with people rather than necessarily having to force a conversation.
Yeah.
But I think some people do use that as an opportunity to open up, and it's great that they can do.
Are you diagnosed then, Rich, as with anxiety? Is that something that you've, as you say, you've spoken to your GP? So is that something that you've definitely, that's something you've spoken to?
Oh yeah, so I was diagnosed about 11 years ago. So I had medication for 8 years and did counselling things, but lots of things didn't work for me, and lots of scenarios didn't work. And I think when I moved to Manchester, it didn't become worse, but I hadn't realised actually when I lived back at home, because I used to go out, I could go out to the countryside a lot more easier. I had certain strategies I would use when I was stressed, or if I had certain, anxieties going on. Like I'd quite often go and sit by the beach or sit on the cliffs and just watch the waves come in, and that would always calm me down. Or I'd go to my parents and play the piano. And then when I was in Manchester and the same anxieties and stresses were going back, it's like, I've got no coping strategies anymore. I don't know what to do, where to go. And that was before I joined Outdoor Lads. And, I still have all the problems and things, but now I quite often funnel all my energy into, okay, if I'm bored or stressful, I end up designing routes for hikes. And I often don't use them, but for me, it's quite a mindfulness thing of saying, oh, I'd like to take people there. I wonder if I can design this route that goes around. And then when that becomes reality, I love doing it. I can see it. And, we've only just, I think there's, it's been delayed because of COVID, but there's mental health training for some leaders coming up as well.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, because I think you're right about it. It shouldn't be a forced situation. I think sometimes just being on an event is good for our mental health anyway.
I think if you listen to a lot of the feedback, a lot of the surveys, there is definitely a theme comes through that members have found that joining Outdoor Lads has made a huge difference to their mental health. And a lot of it is about building self-confidence, self-esteem. You see people join the organization, and there's often guys say, oh, I joined Outdoor Lads and I didn't go on an event for 2 years because it took me that long to summon up the courage to do it. But then you just see them grow and blossom, and turn from someone who's really quite shy and underconfident to someone who's got lots and lots of friends and is the life and soul of the party and is getting lots out of the organization and also putting a lot in.
Yeah, because we've talked a lot in the past few weeks about in the podcasts about our experiences and Outdoor Lads, and it's not a one size fits all measure across the organization and stuff. You might come to an event and it might take you a little longer than that first event to feel like you've made any friends or you're adding anyone's numbers, or you're suddenly in this group. It might take a little bit longer than that. It might take you longer to actually turn up to an event, like you say, Tim. It might just take you that little while longer to feel like you feel confident going to more events, to turning up to the walks, turning up to climbing, turning up to a cycle event, something like that. It does take a lot longer. It's not always a case of joining and the way we talked about it, I think I'm looking back with sort of rose-tinted glasses in some ways, shapes or form, because, my first climbing event was great. I really enjoyed it. That was the first event I ever did. And I remember being at the pub afterwards. I remember being at the Molly House in Manchester and thinking, oh, this is such a nice group. And I think I made I kind of speak through comedy. So I made the odd little joke here or there, and everyone seemed to like it and all this sort of stuff. And it was lovely. But I think it will have taken me a good few weeks to keep pushing myself to go back, because it's meeting any new group of people can be quite an awkward experience and quite difficult. But I asked about about diagnosis, Rich, just because I know that I've never been to see a medical professional about it, but I know that I've got anxiety. I know that I get bouts of depression. I know when they hit, I know how to sort of deal with them. I know when I just need to go into a cocoon and not speak to anyone for a few weeks because I just need to sort of deal with it myself and just go out for walks on my own and stuff. I know what happens. I know how much of a dick I can be when I am in those sort of head spaces.
I think a diagnosis isn't always important. It's important for some people because some people want to understand why they feel the way they feel and put a label on it. But for other people, and it sounds like that's very much where you're coming from, Michael, is you just want to have strategies for dealing with it, which it sounds like you have. But there may not be much of a place for any kind of medical intervention if the intervention that you're doing yourself are working for you. And sometimes there's a tendency to over medicalize things which are actually just part of life.
And that's it. I think it is, you're right. It's when you have to look outside your support network is a good place to start, I suppose, when you need to go to maybe see a doctor. But for us, I mean, I think the one reason I after having medication for 8 or 9 years was because my support network grew when I moved to Manchester. It changed. I was around more people with the same identity as me, who had the same, or had experienced very similar issues to me, and I could talk more freely about it. I love my friends and family back home, but none of them have had to come out. None of them have had to go through the same things we might have done in terms of like homophobia or things like that. It's just that casual thing of starting a new job and having to think about, oh, how am I going to tell everyone that I'm married, or how am I going to tell everyone that I'm gay? Those little things that play on your mind quite a bit that no one else realizes. I only got that group of friends really when I moved to Manchester, and I think that's a big, that support network changed. That's when I was like, okay, I can be a different person now. I can be much more relaxed. And
it's weird, isn't it? Because I mean, I'm really fortunate that I had that experience a lot earlier than you did, Rich. Because when I was living in Cardiff at uni, I joined a gay choir within my second year of uni. I joined the South Wales Gay Men's Chorus, and I was really nervous. And I remember going to the first rehearsal, and it's like we're talking about these Outdoor Lads events. I remember going, and everyone was taught. There was a whole table of cake and coffee and stuff. And usually at an event like that, I'd be like, rah, 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 eaten all of it, but I was so nervous that I couldn't, and we sang in the round and I was really nervous there and everything. It was just really...
That sounds quite intimidating, to sing in the round, staring at each other.
Well, it was a really nerve-wracking experience, but it was also a really lovely one. And within about 2 or 3 weeks of being there, I was meeting people. I was at uni and I was saying to people, I'm gay, but I didn't really want to talk about it. And it was all a bit awkward. And then suddenly I had like this one guy, David, absolutely lovely guy, who just suddenly at this one night at choir came in. I hadn't met him yet, and he said like, "Oh, you're Michael. I've heard lots about you." And he was like, "It's lovely to meet you, darling," and gave me a kiss right on the lips. And I was like, "Oh my God!" And he was so fabulous that I just wanted to be like him. And he was so confident in walking a little bit more, flashy and just being a bit more camp and a bit more, doing impressions of Kim Woodburn every 5 minutes. And I was like, that's what I want to be like. And it just helped me come out of my shell. And suddenly I felt more proud kind of being a bit, because I like playing up camp, and I suddenly felt more proud doing that and being more myself and, just being gay and actually really getting into like gay rights and reading more and learning more about the history and things like that. And I think that, like I say, it's not a one size fits all for a lot of people. That you'll have different experiences with groups like OutdoorLads, but you will meet a lot of people that go through similar experiences to you that you can talk to about that sort of stuff, and it can sometimes be the best medicine, really.
And sometimes you don't even need to talk about it. Sometimes just being there is enough.
Yes, just being with a group of people.
Yeah.
Who are have been through similar experiences you and are on the same wave, but that can just be very empowering in itself, can't it?
Well, Michael, can I tell you my favorite memory about Tim?
Of course you can.
He's going to hate this. So it was New Year hostel, and I was leading a lovely walk of about at big hostels. I tend to get the hangover walk, so that the walk that leaves a bit later doesn't quite go as far. And tends to have a lot more people. Now, Tim is a respectable doctor. So to my surprise, when everyone, we're walking up a hill, not even a steep hill, a field really, there's shouting going, "Oh, there's something wrong with Tim." Like, oh my God, there's something wrong with Tim, and he hasn't known about it beforehand. Then it must be